Welcome to the See What Sticks Variety podcast featuring your hosts, Jake Andrews, Joe D'Souza, and Jackson Playfair.
Here we go again, episode 7, See What Sticks podcast. I am Jameson Andrews, and with me tonight, as always, Joe D'Souza and Jackson Playfair. How you guys doing on this wild Tuesday evening?
Very good.
Hey, doing good, doing well.
Still holding it down in the land of COVID?
Oh, dude, I feel like being in BC, COVID's kind of like, it's like stopped almost, man. Like people are still being aware and being a little bit more cautious, but I feel like a lot of, at least Vancouver, BC area is like, I don't want to say back to normal, but it's getting pretty close to that.
Yeah,
Are they still wearing masks?
Dude, like I mean, yeah, for sure, but like it's not like I mean, most of the grocery stores around my house, it's not like mandatory to have a mask. I mean, most people are
I
still
don't
doing
wear
it.
one.
That's what I mean. Like, I feel like a lot of people aren't, and it's kind of just, I don't know. It's definitely starting to slow down, but I think like, I don't know, the whole COVID thing, dude. I feel like, not to get too deep down into it, but I think that like we handled it well considering what we thought it was, but I think that there's definitely more knowledge now as to what it actually is, and like the actual like death rate and people that get affected and the way you get infected and like a bunch of different things. I think is definitely, like, at least from where I am, from where I'm sitting, it seems to be calming down quite a bit.
Yeah, I would have to definitely agree with that. Like, at least in BC, because according to a lot of news articles, on the Apple app recently in the past week, there's been a lot of cases that are growing in a lot of different areas. Like Brazil's getting hit pretty bad right now, and
I think Italy and the States, definitely.
yeah. Like south and west, apparently, at least according to the BBC, that's something like Alabama and a few other places like in those states are getting hit. It's interesting, man, like because like the whole thing going on with Trump and like this whole election process has been up in the air, and people are.
Yeah, it's definitely putting or made the election take like a back seat in the public eye, which then again, is that all part of the conspiracy of the COVID-19?
You think it's a conspiracy?
Dude, there's definitely conspiracy behind it, and I mean, just the thing that I've seen is like the Democrats in the states, like they don't think that Joe Biden can debate against Donald Trump, which is like pretty legit. Donald Trump's kind of a savage when it comes to debating, and they think that like if he goes up against him straight up, he's just going to get destroyed. So a lot of people are saying that like COVID and different things are made such a big deal to make the actual election process look smaller. Now I'm not saying that I believe in that and that's what I think is right. I'm just saying that it's out there.
Sleepy
And
Joe can barely keep his eyes open during a debate, so.
dude, it makes sense, right? Like then when you actually look at Joe Biden, you're like, dude, could you imagine if this guy went up against Donald Trump? Donald would just yell at him and it'd be like him
Yeah.
screaming insults at him on live TV.
Donald's not a great debater.
No, I was just gonna say that. Like, it's not even like debating it. He's just gonna like call you out on stuff about your character and what you look like, and it could
It's not
be
even
wrong.
true half the time. It's just fucking
Dude, exactly. He doesn't even debate. He just like says stuff that has
childish
nothing to do.
name calling.
Yeah, it's literally just name calling. Yeah, it's so funny, dude. It feels like when you like even watching the last debates, it feels like it's something that like someone should step in and like tell him to be quiet, and like nobody does it. They just let him yell and like say whatever he wants. Like even like the moderator doesn't do a good job of being like, okay, that's enough. He just like lets him say whatever he wants, and then no one steps in and is like, that was a ridiculous thing he just said. They just keep rolling with it because they're on a time limit to make sure it airs at the right time. Like,
Like,
Well,
what's the deal? Like,
he's got a voter base, and they're kind of, he appeals to their emotions and their desires and the way they think, and it's sad to say, but they think obviously it's enough people to get him reelected, so they're not going to like correct him and try to make him more politically correct. That's his whole shtick.
oh no, exactly, exactly. That's why he is where he is, right? And I think that's the crazy part about the states is there's like whole states, and so therefore whole groups of people where they just know they're going to elect or vote red or blue. So it's like a red state or a blue state, and you're not even debating for those people. You're debating for like the swing states, the states that can go the other ways, and like that's just a crazy concept in general. Like it doesn't matter who the guy is. A large population of people are always just going to vote for their side, and so it kind of makes the debates seem like almost useless or like definitely flawed. And then when you do watch them, if you are like on the fence and you see him go up there and just bully, like that's gonna make a lot of people be like, oh, like I like this guy. This guy's funny. This guy's whatever they see in him. It's not like a shocking thing. It just, I mean, yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but you also like understand why he has the people voting and supporting for him that he does. You know?
Do you guys
he's
know who Mitch
entertaining.
McConnell is?
What's that?
Do you know who Mitch McConnell is?
Yeah, I know the name. I don't know like necessarily what he's from.
He's a senator, and he's the Senate Majority Leader. So I think he's like equivalent to like the Speaker of the House sort of thing for the Senate. But he's a real piece of shit. And I'm not even gonna censor that. Like he just is what he is. Like his record of voting and like doing the wrong thing and just towing the party line kind of speaks for itself. And he's the Kentucky senator, which is funny because there was like all these stories about like voter suppression from earlier this week and up until even today. About 95% of the polling places were closed down, especially in like urban areas and like where poor people and like African Americans tend to be more prevalent. And obviously, he's not doing much for them, so that seems a little fucky. They said mail-in voting's like cheating, even though there's a record of Donald doing it twice back in 2018 and as recently as 2020. His daughter doing it, his son-in-law doing it, and his son doing it. So how is it cheating if you guys have all used that method to vote? It's whatever fits their narrative at the time, and it's just
100%. And that's like that's the crazy thing that is like almost, it's like I think politics has always been that somewhat, right? Like whoever is in power has the ability to try and shape with the way that things look, and they have the president title to do that. But I think now the crazy part is it's just like so out in the open. Like it's just everyone knows. Like it's not like it's years later people just like figuring it out. It's this huge scandal and like everyone's shocked by it. It's like real time. People are aware of what's going on. But again, it's like there's two different sides fighting for what's right. So there's no way to be like, oh, that's like crazy. We need to stop this, because then there's just an equal amount of people being like, no, we need to support it. It's like
I think there's a difference between fighting for what's right and just fucking making the case for your party, whether it's terribly wrong for the country or not. Like most of their decisions go against everything that should happen.
It's really interesting, yeah, because like to touch on that, like both sides have very important things or like really good reasons for why they believe a certain thing, right? Like left wing or right wing. So like there's going to be a lot of people that have a certain amount of values that place like a greater degree of importance on certain values. Like for instance, like the left loves equality and like a more I get like I don't want to say Marxist, but I want to say like leaning towards like a group identity,
like
or
social reform.
It's and so like, but the right is also like all about is basically essentially just like keeping the system running well and like doing keeping things without change as much, like, so because I remember reading an article saying that something like Republican change or conservative change is like an oxymoron, because like conservatives don't generally like change that much. Like I don't know how accurate that statement is, but that's something interesting to think about. So like there's a dialogue that happens between both of them, and there's a lot of political figures and social figures like Peterson again or Shapiro. Like there needs to be a dialogue between the two of them, which is good, but like it's weird. It's hard to sometimes, like, on different values. I personally find myself resting on different sides. Like I'm never like I'm never be like, yeah, I'm fully left wing, or yeah, I'm fully right. Like I kind of
have an open mind.
Like, but yeah, that's
centrist too, and that means like I don't toe any party line. It's like whatever issue it is, I lean towards the what's right in that given situation, not fucking what's right according to my conservative or liberal values. Like,
which is again in theory what we're all like supposed to kind of do, right? And the whole taking a team side of something is what I think then shapes it from like is it politics, or is it like is it about winning, or is it about finding the best answer? And right now I think it's all about winning, right?
Yeah,
Like
is being the
keeping the
bird.
power.
Yeah, well, like being the bird in the middle, not the right wing of the eagle or the left wing of the eagle. You want to be the bird that's like, if you got to go right, you got to go right to fly for a little bit. If you got to go left, you want to go over there, you go left.
That's kind
yeah,
of what I like about Shapiro and Peterson and guys like that. Like, yeah, obviously they're both controversial in their own rights, but I mean, at least they're like open minded to like other opinions, and they don't think they're right on everything, but they're definitely strong in their convictions and they make good points, but they're also like not stuck on any one thing if change needs to happen.
Yeah, which is key, I think.
yeah, I think it's key to so many things. Like ultimately I find a lot of the times with those guys when they're speaking, it's like they're saying something that seems super obvious, but yet somehow it's controversial, and they just have a way of just like being like, let's not go to the extreme of the controversial. Let's stay in the middle where we can be rational and have these discussions, right?
Yeah, and being rational, I think, is incredibly important. And what I think which is so good about Peterson and Shapiro and a few others that are good social figures right now is that they have a good relationship with their community. Like if you look at the comments on most videos, like there's a good relationship there. And I think that like for some other political figures, like I mean, like Donald Trump has a very wide, like a varied kind of unstable relationship. It's so hard to say because again, this is just my opinion. So, but it just feels like there's a lot of people that are both against and a lot of people that are with Donald Trump, right? Whereas I feel like there's a majority of a good relationship with say Peterson or Shapiro. Like most people that listen to them can agree and be like, yeah, like I like that. And I think that relationship is so important.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people equate Jordan Peterson with like going against liberal values, but he's like the figurehead of the left side movement, even though he doesn't like associate himself with that. It's just kind of like where his beliefs line up, and he got called out for something that went against the left. And I'm not going to speak on that because like we're going to get into the territory of like potentially being labeled offensive, so I don't want to dive into that issue, but it's certainly an interesting political landscape in America, and it should be interesting come November. What is it, 2021, when they hit the polling stations?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like it's so tough, man. Everything can be so controversial now, and like with the issues coming out and different things, it's. I think the biggest thing that like I try and look at it as is just be level headed and understand like perspective can change. You can look at things in different ways, and even understanding like not being able to understand people who support a certain side. It's like, well, if that side fits your narrative, if that side fits what you're doing in certain aspects, it's easier to support. So I think just like having perspective and trying to navigate it the best way without getting too overly involved is probably the most ideal way to go about it. And if you have an issue, get out and vote.
I think there's a lot of people that forget about the right to freedom of speech and like the freedom to agree to disagree, like respectfully. Like I feel like that's gone the way of the dodo lately.
Oh, big time, man. People don't like when their sides aren't right, and they do not like being told that they. And it's tough because like it goes both ways. No one likes to be told what to do. At the end of the day, nobody likes the feeling of being told what to do. And when either side is saying that what you're doing is wrong and you shouldn't be doing it, I think people get offended. And that's just the biggest thing is like people, I don't know when it became unacceptable to offend people. Like offending people shouldn't be the end of the world. Like it should just be if someone's offended by you, then don't talk to that person. It doesn't need to be this level of right and wrong, and I'm gonna show everyone what a horrible person you are, how right I am. It's like, man, it's just gotten to such an extreme level. And again, I think it's just because information and the ability to see stuff is so easily available to us.
It does sting, doesn't it, when somebody's like, "You're not right." Like,
Dude, and
there's
it
such a
sucks. It
sting.
sucks. It sucks even more when someone's like, "You're not right," and then you're like, "Fuck you, yeah, I am right." And then 20 minutes later, you're like, "No, I wasn't right. I was being an asshole, or I was whatever." But if you can realize that in the moment, or at least be like, "Whatever, man," if that's what you think, then you go through the. You don't have to go through the part of like being an asshole and being like, "No, I'm not wrong," and then realizing you were wrong. It's like, just
It's a
don't get
double
so worked
whammy.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Part of
don't.
understanding somebody's maturity is like understanding the ability to see that in instances where you are not right, or like the evidence points that your point is not right, it's a chance to like learn something or to understand a different perspective. Like, use it as a positive. We don't always have to be right, but people want to be so badly these days.
Yeah, and when did being like that's the thing, being right or like winning. It's like when did that become like even in my own life, it's like, oh, I have arguments with people or situations and people are like, oh, I can just never win with you. There's no winning with you. It's like, yeah, there shouldn't be winning. Like no one needs to win. No one needs to lose in these conversations. People can just go through life and understand that there's another perspective, there's another side. And like I think that actually I seen a funny tweet. It's kind of more liberal conservative talk, but it was on Twitter, and someone was like, "People often say that like going to university liberalizes you or turns you into a liberal," and it's like, sorry, I went to school and gained a perspective and learned that other people think different ways, and there's other ways to look at the world than my own way, and like never changing isn't necessarily the answer. And it's like, it's kind of true. Like before I went to school, I was a lot more like, whatever, I'm right. If I'm wrong, screw you. And like, I'm not saying that school individually did that, but school did open my eyes in a large portion to like other perspectives, other ideas, other views. I think that like that can be an element to it when you see people who are just so stuck in their ways, you know?
Wow. Like,
Well,
sorry. Go
yeah,
ahead,
go ahead.
Jake. Oh, okay. Well, I had something really interesting that just came to mind when you were saying that. Like, it feels like almost like school like influences that competitiveness. It breeds it a little bit, right? Because like we're all graded, and so like, if you're trying to get into that school, you got to compete with how many other thousands of people that are trying to get in there. So there's that sort of like competitive nature almost kind of built into us, which I mean, in a way that like it's a really like competitiveness is a good thing. Like I feel like that's just a blanket statement, and that's just my opinion on it. But I think that like competitiveness is a good thing because it helps you to really try, right? Like there's a lot of times when I'm like playing, let's say for instance, like when I'm playing my video games, is I don't like okay, so I play a fighting game, Dragon Ball Fighters. I play that game, and I never ever. Even when I played Dead or Alive or Mortal Kombat, I would absolutely never play the social match up option. I would always go ranked because it just felt like whenever if there was like something on the line, like if I win or lose, it affects my like percentage or like my grading within the game. Then it makes it there's something little extra there that makes me like really want to try for it, and really, and I feel like there's a feedback loop there for myself. That's not for everybody, but that's just something that like I just noticed in myself. Like that competitiveness is something that drives me to want to try harder. So, but it's delicate, right? Though, because like, you can't just apply it to everything. Like you can't do that with your friends. Just always be competitive with them because then you get salty.
I feel
Well,
like university kind of like it helps you understand how to have dialogue and like healthy discourse without disparaging other people's opinions. And it is a competition, but it's a competition with like the curriculum and the expectation of the average student, where you find out what you're made of, you rise to the occasion, and you kind of overcome past versions of yourself and like
Ooh.
overcome the expectations of what you thought you could do. And it's a very healthy building block for life, I think, for sure.
yeah, I definitely think like I don't know, like for me, like how old were you guys when you went for your first year of university?
I was 19, I think. 19 or
30.
20.
Dude, and like Jake, you were 30. I was 21 my first semester. And I don't know. I just think like for me, so much of school going in a little bit older, like not super fresh out of high school, taking a few years off and then going to university, it really like put it a little bit in perspective where you're right. Like as much as you are competing against a class, like I always view the class as more of a group and like you're competing against yourself. Like if you, I think by the end of my fourth year, I was pretty much had it down, at least taking like the business classes that I took at the university I went to. Like I understood in myself what an A or like a 90% say what that effort looked like I knew what like an A looked like, I knew what a B looked like, I knew what a C looked like, and like the amount of work that I put in was going to be the result I got back. Like very rarely was I surprised by the mark I got. Like either I didn't do something until the night before, I rushed it and I handed it in and got a C, or I took the time I needed and put the work in and actually tried, and then maybe I had a hard grader and didn't get the mark I thought I deserved. But ultimately, like I think the big thing about school is like whatever you get in school is exactly what you put into it. Like it's not a shocking thing when you don't do well or you do well, in my opinion. I don't know if that's going to school a little bit more mature than like coming fresh out of high school, or if that's just something that everyone kind of picks up on once you've got through it and understand it, that like if you go to the library the day before the big exam and you study for 20 hours and you have a mental breakdown, it's like, yo, know that exam's coming and study a little bit earlier, or don't worry so much about it mentally because you know how much work you put in. Like, you know what you've done. I don't know. Maybe I'm off on a invalid point, but that was always my view on it. Like,
I think Joe wants to jump in here. I'll let him go before I speak to that.
Yeah, it was just something really brief. I was just thinking that like it must have helped so much to like have those extra few years off before going to university, because there was this pressure I remember from at the end of high school of being like, I gotta get in, right? Like, because I don't want to miss my friends or whatever. Like I don't want to like fall behind or whatever. I was just like, there's this pressure of trying to get. I remember taking I didn't get in to where I wanted to get in the first time when I went to Queens. So I took half a semester and redid a couple classes. I took like a writer's craft and like a tutoring course or something, just to bring my grade up a few extra percent so that I could get into the school that I wanted to. But then when I went there, like even though I had that extra 6 months or so off, and I guess technically like I skipped a year. Then when I went for my first year, I still had no idea what the hell I was doing. Like I didn't know what I was going for, like what I wanted to do. Like I was pulled in all these different directions. So I ended up taking like a generalized, like I took a little bit of everything if I could, a little bit of science, a little bit of English, a little bit of stuff like all over the place. And at the end of that first year, I still didn't know. So I took a year off before I went back for my second year. And like, there's a lot of people that were afraid that I wasn't going to go back. I was just going to drop right out. But I needed that extra year off because when I did go back, I had a more clear vision. Yeah.
I feel like there's like a terrifying, impending doom that you feel when you feel like you have to get in there right away. But there's also like the inverse of, like, I went to the working world for several years. I started college late and finished that, and then I'm in university now. So I got the best of like every world, but like there was a inverse of that dread that you felt and that you needed to get in soon to like catch up with your friends. I didn't have any friends. I was in a new city with nobody that I went to school with. I had been out of school for like 12 years by the time or 10 years by the time I went to college. I was 28 when I started college, and college teaches you that you have to use other students as like a resource and to network and to partner up with somebody to get the job done. And there's downsides to that, where if people don't do the work, then you have to carry their ass like a backpack. But the working world definitely taught me how to battle through adversity and how to put my best foot forward and how to be a professional in like everything that I do, so that by the time I got to college and now even in university, I feel like I relate more to the professors than I do the other students. And I think that they see the maturity in a student who's like 28 or 30 starting versus somebody who's 19. And I feel like from the hop, like I've had a leg up on other students just because
They're
I'm not
older.
around. I'm there to do a job, and I have high expectations of myself, and I know that I read the curriculum and the syllabus like back and front and center, and I plan out every week and when I'm going to do my homework and when things are due and how long I need to do it. It all comes down to like personal perseverance and like what you need to do. Like university is much more of an individual game where you should still look at other students as like a resource to kind of ask questions and bounce ideas off of and say, oh, am I crazy, or is this due at this time, or do you guys know any good ideas for this? But it's a lot less like having to count on other people. You can just count on yourself. And yeah, there's this strange feeling to think that I'm closer in age to my professors than I am to my other students, because they definitely don't. It's still a very cliquey thing in university, and I stay as far away from that as possible. I have like a few good close friends, and other than that, it's get in, do my business, and get out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with that, you know what to expect. And that's why, like, I remember just my first year or second, no, it was my first year at university. And like, I was one of those students my whole university career where like I couldn't just like sit down, whip out my laptop and like bang out an assignment. Like, if I was going to bang out an assignment, I had to like go to the library, find a desk, put in the hours that I know I needed to do to finish it. And if I didn't finish it, then the next day I was coming back or I was going to like a Starbucks or something. But it was like it was my first exam season where like everyone's at the library. It's like finals for first semester. Everyone's studying all day, all night, whatever. And I walked in the library. It was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I walk up these stairs. I walk around the corner. And they had like 4-person desks down the sides of our library. And at one of the 4-person desks, there was like a girl sitting there, and she had her computer set up with like notes all over the table. She had like a pizza box, like Tim Hortons, a bunch of coffees, and she was underneath the desk on her phone with a pillow and a blanket, crying underneath her desk, going through her work. And I remember just like walking by and just having a thought where I'm like, this is not what this experience is meant to be. Like, like when you go to school, that's not and I understand there's way harder programs. Like, if you're studying to be a doctor, if you're studying to be like anything, an engineer, I totally get it's completely different than what I went through in my experience in 4 years of studying a business degree. But I just have a hard time believing at any point through any experience is that what it's meant to be. And I
What did
just
you expect if you were them though? Like you go for an engineering degree, you have to know that your course load is heavy. So if you don't plan it out properly and take the time to like prepare for these things, you're gonna have a fucking meltdown.
exactly. And I just remember thinking like that is not worth like an A in anything is not worth that to me. Like,
Well, I liked what you said about the library things. I find some of the best work that I do is, if I get in there well before an assignment and I just sit down and commit myself to that kind of get it done thing. And I couldn't help but thinking in like my first year of university, some of the intro courses, like they spoon feed you in the
oh
syllabus
my
and in
god.
the assignment guidelines to where these people are asking the dumbest questions during class. And I'm just like shaking my head. Like I really want to just like speak up in class and say, "That's a dumb question. Did you even read the syllabus, you fucking moron?"
Dude,
I don't want to be that guy, but
I'm sorry. I'm gonna say like an ignorant thing that's a half a joke here, but yo, if you fail an intro to anything course, like that's A on you, bro, and B, you tried to fail that. Like, failing classes to me, I mean maybe that's an ignorant approach to have, but like you have to pretty much not hand in any of the assignments, not try on any of the assignments, and then still miss like a few of the big exams or don't do the final project in order to actually fail an intro class.
and
Like,
at that point, do you actually expect to pass? Like you'd have to be stupid.
exactly. At that point, if you then are surprised by the fact you failed, like, dude, drop out of school, take some time, go do something else for a bit, and come back when you're a little bit older and you realize that, like, exactly like you said, Jake, it's a job. Like, when you're
I
there, it's a job. You're
I
doing work.
remember one of our first assignments in an intro class, I got like a 95 on it. And I guess the class average was like a 67. And I was going through it in class saying, like, okay, guys. And I'm thinking in my head, like, all I did was go through the assignment outline. I copied and pasted that into a Word document. I got rid of the stuff that didn't apply. And it's literally like bullet points on exactly what they're expecting from you. If you can't shit out an assignment that is like spoon fed to you, you're gonna struggle in upper years.
Dude, and that's again where I think it ties into the relationships you have, because to me, one like some of the best advice I ever got was just guys on my hockey team at university that would just look at me on my first year and be like, "Hey man, you have an issue, you don't understand something, something doesn't make sense, or you miss something, talk to your professor. If you can't talk to your professor, talk to your TA. Like, be friendly. Don't treat them like these strangers that exist and they just walk in the room and then they walk out and that's it. Like, have a conversation with them, ask them how their day is going, talk about the coursework, and then when you have an issue come up, it's a lot easier to go to that person and be like, hey, what's this or what's that or
I
here's
can't
and
tell you how many times I've went to my professor and said like, "Hey, I think I'm on the right track with this assignment, but can I run it by you and see what you think?" Like they're happy to do it. And even if you get a power drunk TA that wants to flunk you and give you a C when you think you deserved an A, like I've had the professors go over it multiple times for different assignments and give me like a substantially higher grade because they disagreed with them. People don't even leverage those resources half the time. It's crazy.
exactly. And I think that's where it ties so much into like learning relationship skills and how to have those relationships, how to develop those relationships, and then for how like it might sound bad, but how to work those relationships, how to then
Active.
like yeah, it doesn't make you a bad person that you're using that person for your betterment. Like that's why
You're
they're
not
there.
cheating the system. You're just
Exactly.
doing what's available.
It's so weird though, because like I remember being in like grade 6 and seeing my teacher in the movie theater, and it was so crazy bizarre because it was like, no, you only exist in the school, and that's not the
You're
truth. But
not a
like,
real person.
you're not a real person. What is going on? And then like, so I think that relationship with like the student teacher thing, I think that gets overlooked a lot. I think it's great that you guys are outlining it the way that you guys are, because I think it's important to know that like they're there to help you. They're not there to flunk you.
Exactly. And like you're right, but it's important that I think we all have that. Like my funniest memes on the internet are the ones where like we all live the same life and it's like something that we've all been through. But like seeing your teacher out in public in elementary school, everyone has that out of body experience where you're like, "Whoa, like what are you doing? Get lost. You're not supposed to be here." But that's why you have those experiences. So then the idea is that when you get to that level where those relationships are supposed to be important, you've gotten past that. You understand that you're like, oh yeah, that guy is a person. He's just a teacher. That's just his job. And right now, my job is student. And like, but for me, that's where, like Jake said, like I grew up. I went to 4 different high schools in 4 years. Like my high school experience was never about going to university. My high school experience was about getting out of high school to go do other stuff that I wanted to do. So then when I came to university, I was like completely behind the eight ball in the whole process. I didn't know how to apply. I didn't know what grades I needed. I didn't know anything, man. And that's why for me it was so unique going to school, because I was like, it's strange to be an older person and sit in on like an intro class full of first year students fresh out of high school, first time living away from home, first time cooking for themselves, first time going through. It's
There's
unique.
been a lot of silver spoon moments where I've noticed some peculiar behavior, and it's like some of these kids you can tell they've never had to do anything for themselves. Um, and I feel like there could be a giant segment about like different instances of that, but one I'll point out that's just hilarious. That's happened multiple times in my experience. Is there's like a class list in the emails, and some people will forget to hit reply just to reply to the professor, and they'll reply all to every 400 students in their undergrad class, and they'll even though it says in the course outline there will be no exam deferrals for like a shitty reason, these kids will reply all to every like 400 kids and say, "Oh, sorry, professor, I had to take a shit on Saturday, and my stomach hurt really bad. Can I get a deferral for the exam?" And I'm just thinking, you're fucking out to lunch, like.
And that's the
Wow,
thing.
go
Just to
ahead.
touch on that quickly, sorry, and then I'll throw it over to you. But just like, hey, if you happen to be a university student listening to this podcast right now, and you're taking anything out of this, if you do need to get out of an exam, or you feel like you need to get out of an assignment, or you didn't do something, I promise you, do not tell them that someone in your family died. Do not tell them that you have this ridiculous excuse of why you didn't do something. Just be honest, man. Just go up to your teacher and be like, hey, I had a ton of stuff to, whatever the situation is. And 9 out of 10 times, if you're honest with these people, they'll be honest with you. And it might not be what you want to hear, but the next time, because you just looked at that person and told them the truth, they're going to help you out down the road in some way, more likely than not. But when you just go up there and decide that you're going to make up an excuse that it benefits you, it's not going to work.
They don't care about your kitty foo fucking got the flu. It doesn't fucking matter to them. And it's embarrassing because, like, okay, a lot of the professor's responses are exactly what I would tell myself. You didn't study, you didn't have any foresight into how you would navigate the course up until the final portion of it where you started to panic because you knew you didn't do the work. The answer is tough shit. You're going to fail. Learn the lesson, move on, take the course again, and do it differently the next time. Like, I fucked up high school so bad. I was out there smoking weed, skipping class. I had a horrible, like, 62 average or something when I graduated. I had to take an extra semester just to up my average, and it still wasn't high enough to get into university. I had to go to adult high school at 27.
Yo, I love that so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the left wing and the right wing argument for delaying your exam papers or whatever. That was great. I have a question about, because like I think it was Jackson, you were saying you were talking about roles and knowing your role as like a student and a teacher, and I thought that was a really interesting thing that I'd like to explore a little bit with you guys, and being like, I think that roles, like the idea of like having a role in a relationship, is overlooked or not really thought of a lot. At least it took me a long time to like be like, what's my role here, or even ask that question. Like what does it mean to have a role? What do you think?
I mean, in what aspect are you talking about? Like in
Well, like
in
let's just say friends. Let's just take the like idea of relationship of friends. Um, what do you guys think would be the role of being your friend? Like, because I think that a lot of people have different ideas of what that even means.
I think something I appreciate in a friendship is when everyone else is kind of telling me what I want to hear, a real friend will tell me what I need to hear, and they'll only take out of the relationship what they give in. They're not selfish and just pulling stuff out, but there's a lot of people that confuse their own selfishness and receiving the same behavior back as they only see someone being selfish to them, not what they did to precipitate that behavior. But I find a lot of the best friendships I have are a lot of givers, and they'll very rarely take, which will inspire giving around them and little take. So you only take when you need to take, and you give in a lot.
Yeah, I like that a lot. What do you think, Jay?
yeah, no, I really like that too, and I don't know. I think like friendships specifically are unique. I mean, for me, I've lived in a lot of different places. I've never lived anywhere for longer than 4 or 5 years maximum in one city or spot. So for me, I've had a lot of the relationships, and I've had a lot of short relationships and friendships, in the sense that um, I move in somewhere, become friends with somebody, become very close with them, and then you try and maintain that relationship through distance. But I think the biggest thing to understand is your friends are your friends, no matter what. Like when you see these people, and whether it's all the time or sometimes, have maintaining that relationship is about understanding that, like, you shouldn't expect anything out of a friendship or a relationship that exactly like Jake said, you don't put into it. And if you do put in a lot to it, you still necessarily don't always need to expect something back, because sometimes you don't understand what that other person's going through. And that's part of friendship, right? It's like, it's a give and take situation. And um, for me personally, I just think that, yeah, I think it's like, it's important to know that the role of a friendship is as much as you decide to make it, and it's as much as you want to put into it, but it's also understanding that, like, your friends are your friends when things are tough, when they're there for you, and your friends are your friends when they're not there for you, like physically, and maybe in a sense where you expect them to be. I think that that's the thing about friendship that's hard for people is um, it takes a lot of different shapes. And like, are you someone's best friend because you see them every day, or are you someone's best friend because you know the most about them, or you've spent the most time with them? I think, like, ultimately friendships are about trying to be a good person and spreading the fact that if you're enjoyable to be around, you're fun to be around, then it's something that grows with time. But yeah.
I find it's hard to find somebody that listens in a relationship, and some of the best friends I have are the ones that they make a house feel like a home, whether that's a physical home or it's a new city that you're in and you're trying to navigate the new waters, or whether that's the actual relationship that you guys have as friends. And I know some people, I've gone years without talking to them, but I know if I ever need somebody to listen and just hear me out, and then if I want advice, they give me sound advice that's not just blowing smoke up my ass and telling me, oh, things will bounce back, you'll get them. It's like, no, in this specific situation, here's what you did to get yourself into that situation. In my humble opinion, here's what it would take to get yourself out. Or here's what I've been seeing that you've been doing great lately, and keep it up, and keep pushing in this avenue, and
Yeah,
give.
there's like a fine line between like friends and frenemies, and kind of to bring it back to like the competitive nature that a lot of us have kind of built into us a lot of the time. I think that's a good way to identify somebody that might not really actually be somebody that's looking out for the best of you. And I think that's something that is important, is that it's like, no matter, like, I'm your friend, like I want what's best for you. And like, we might, like, if we, for instance, say are playing a game of basketball, then we can be competitive there, and bust each other's balls a little bit, and kind of try and one up each other a little bit there. But I think an ultimate, like a good friend, like ultimately would be to somebody that just wants the best for you. So like kind of what you're saying, Jake, is that like if you go, people that you haven't spoken to in years, but if you're like, I need some good advice, or you're looking for advice, they'll give it to you like straight, and give it to you in a way that like you need to hear it. I think that there's a lot of people out there that like pretend to be your friends, but are really got some things deep down that they're just trying to uh, get the better of you, or try to upset you. And there's like,
Or there's a
and
hidden agenda and they want something from you, and as soon as you don't have something they want, they kick you to the curb.
yeah, and I think it's important to be able to be like, hey, a good identifier for me too is if like years go by and talking to them, it's the same still. It's still the same. It's not like all crazy and weird. Like, oh, I haven't heard from you in years, and like all this drama.
Hmm.
I I think that like if you have friends that you haven't spoken to in years, and then yeah, like you talk to them, and it's like, hey, what's going on? And it feels still more or less the same. Like both of you changed a little bit, but you're
I
both
used to have those
that kind of
arguments with
ideas.
people all the time about, oh, you haven't called me. Oh, well, you haven't called me. It's like, fucking give it a rest. It's not what matters here. Like, if you would just cut that shit out, it wouldn't come from me either. So
Yeah.
enjoy the time we do have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And that's the ultimate where, like, people want, like it goes both ways. And that's like, phones work both ways. But that's the good thing, like you say, like I view it, like I love nothing more in the world than when I haven't talked to my friends in years, and when I catch up with them, they're like succeeding in what they want to succeed in, or they're pursuing what they want to pursue, and they're doing it whether they're having a good time or a bad time. Like, it's oftentimes the people you talk to where it's like, yeah, I haven't heard from you in 3 years, and it's like, well, what have you been up to? And they're like, nothing. And it's like, well, what do you want me to, like, I'm not trying to be rude, but like, what do you want me to, what should I call you and be like, hey man, what's up? Nothing. Cool. What are you doing? Nothing. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Okay, see ya. Like, or do I want a friend who I catch up and the first time you see him in 3 years, you're literally catching up, being like, dude, I was doing this or this happened or whatever.
Telling stories, yeah.
It's
Well, I think
living.
Jackson mentioned too that like you don't know what other people got going on in their life. Like I get some people that try to say, "Oh, you haven't called me," and it's like, well, the same is true for the inverse. And like if you want to compare who's got a busier schedule, like let me rattle off the list of things I got going on. I don't even want to
Okay.
hear yours.
Okay, it's very interesting though, because now then that makes me think of something else that is like, um, I'm trying to think of like why people would do that though, because I've had that as well. For there's a lot of friends that I can think of that have been like that for me too, and it's like not too many, obviously, you know what I mean, but still, there's been a few, and I've been like, why might they feel that way? And I think maybe
They
it's
miss you,
they miss you, yeah, and so that I think
but
that's important to
you're
think
that
about.
bad, reach out. It's not on any one person.
I
Like
know, and this is where the competitiveness needs to be away. It's like, okay, like, because now it's starting to go back and forth of being like, okay, yeah, but you didn't and I didn't, and so it's like, well, fuck you and fuck you. Okay, now 10 more years.
Well, that's the thing, dude. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I miss all my friends, like all my good buddies, my that I played hockey with, went to school with. Like, I miss them all. But like at the same time, when I first see them, and when I talk to them, I'm like, yeah, man, I miss you. Like, can't wait till we can catch up again. But it's like if the other person, like, don't build resentment because you miss somebody. Like, that's
Right?
the
Yeah.
thing. That's the thing where it's like, dude, I want you to miss me, but like first time I would see you, I don't want you to be like, oh man, I've been missing you. It's like, well, then do other shit, man. Stop missing me. Like, go live your fucking life. Like,
well, and that's like it's not just exclusive to friendships. Like I feel like I've been in some toxic relationships where it's been, the guilt trip about they don't have enough going on in their life, so any like progress you're making in yours, they have to compare their own shitty life to yours and kind of try to drag you down to their level.
mhm.
And the best relationships I've had are the ones where, they don't need to criticize and question my behavior and what I've been doing and why I've been doing it. It's like I'm doing what I feel is best for me and I'm trying to get ahead and I want the same for you. But if you're seriously going to be doom and gloom and fucking woe is me all the time, like you're not giving this the best chance to succeed and it's going to be an inevitable I'm going to move on at some point.
It's interesting because I feel like there's an overlap between romantic relationships and friendships that I think that you should be a friend on some
Best
level.
romantic relationships are
With your romantic,
your best friend.
Yeah, dude.
yeah,
I think ultimately that's where I say like your best friend it should be the person that you end up with, and it's the person you do spend the most amount of time with. It is the person you have. I don't think it's all about having everything in common, loving the same music. Like, I mean, that stuff's cool and like important to an extent, but at the same time, it's about like when you find someone who's your best friend, you also realize that like they're similar to you, but they're also very different, and that's what keeps relationships like um
It's the balance.
it is, right? It's the balance. It's like it's funny. Like a lot of the times when I get in disagreements or arguments with my significant other, like 9 out of 10 times at the end of the day, when the dust settles, we'll like look at each other and be like, "We're saying the same thing to each other. Like we feel the same way. Like it's like whatever. Like I feel what you feel, and you feel what I feel. We're just saying it in different ways, and we feel disrespected about the same thing, and we feel hurt about the same thing." And you kind of realize a lot of times, especially when you spend a lot enough time with somebody, that like you're almost arguing with a mirror, and you're like, dude, just stop. If the less you get mad at yourself, the less you're going to be getting mad at your significant other. When really, whatever it is you're arguing about isn't a big deal. It's not. It's not something that's. It's just little things in your own life that you like. The other person can reflect and you notice, and that's why I think it is important that the person you're with is at least a friend, and then develop to grow into being your best friend. Because like I mean, I think that's kind of what it's all about.
yeah, and keeping tabs is not a good idea.
In
Like
what
being
sense?
like being in the sense that like it's just, well, In the
I
sense that,
must
like,
go
if you,
anywhere at all
yeah,
times.
like I do all this, like you don't even do this, or you know what I mean, like being like, how many times have I been? You're not doing this. I've done it 6 times. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it can brew up into something if it's, especially if it's not discussed, if it's not
It's
open, and
resentment.
it builds resentment. Yeah.
Well, and there's a difference between I'm doing things because I notice that you do these things often, and I want to contribute and chip in and do my part silently and not throw it in your face, and vice versa. I'd appreciate if you do the same sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think, um, like you were talking about earlier, Joe, like roles, right? Like I don't think that like in a relationship you should ever fill into like any predetermined role that isn't not like I think role is probably the wrong word for it because I think when you immediately think of a relationship and role, there's like the different you know things that come into mind. But I mean it more in the sense of like, hey, like I like living in a clean house. My partner likes living in a clean house. One person shouldn't have to clean the house the whole time. But that doesn't mean that like I do this, you do that. It's tit for tat. But it's just about helping and supporting each other because whatever it is, you are playing roles in each other's life to in the end, in a healthy relationship, you just want to better each other's lives, right? Like you just
I think,
want
I think
betterment.
playing a role, I think the better phrase is like you're playing a part in contributing in various different areas of the relationship to have a happy and stable relationship. Like you have to play your part. And if you don't in any one area, it's going to cause stress that kind of brings the house of cards down after enough snowballs start to roll down the hill.
Ooh, this is getting tasty. Okay, so I think that I think because I think of archetypes. I'm trying to think. So I want to bring this in. I'm going to throw this down a rabbit hole here, and being like, yes, I agree with. I would say the very left wing arguments being presented here, being like, sharing roles, but I think that there potentially could be a certain sort of gradients, a certain like a characteristic of being, say, a father, or being a mother, or being, a husband, or being a wife. And there are things that I think that are unique to each of those roles that are important for the other person. And I think that, like, I ultimately like I think it's important to like identify what those mean for you and your significant other. I think that that's important for you guys to identify that. But I think that there is something to be said that, for a lot of history, and a lot of the way, men and women just, for example, have organized themselves in like building families, and specific roles that have been taken. I think that there's something to be said that, like, I don't think we should like push that away and like not think about
I, I
what
think there's
those
like
might
a
mean.
leading edge in this 21st century where like a lot of those conventional roles that were filled by certain people in relationships kind of cross over a lot,
Yeah.
more so nowadays. But like that's where it comes in with the kind of archetype of an old fashioned person. And I would consider myself that in the idea of like chivalry and opening doors and like being a romantic and you know uh, there's
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect my wife to cook fucking dinner for me every night or do all the chores just because they used to do it in the 60s. Like there's some things that have gone way out of style. There's still some extremists, I'm sure, that think that those are the roles that need to be occupied in a marriage or in a relationship. But I think it's just comes down to like, you know, what kind of dynamic do you have with your significant other? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Help build each other up and like shore up each other's weak spots.
Yeah, and like ultimately, always remember that it's just like they're never more or less than another person. Like they're another human being. So don't put them on any sort of pedestal and expect a certain behavior out of them. Know that they all have good days, they all have bad days. But then again, like no one should ever be treated how less than how you view yourself or treat yourself. So it's I think that's the biggest thing with a relationship is like you can begin to expect things out of each other, want things. You should always want and discuss and go for different aspects. But like I think it's the expectation that you say it's like whether you believe in old fashioned or not. Like I think that that's always changing, and it depends on who you are and the type of relationship you're in. Like I, for example, grew up in a house where like I never seen my dad like cook, like go in and cook a big 4-course meal, you know, but he did the dishes and did other things. But like for me personally, I love to cook. So like I would never expect um, my partner to cook every meal because I enjoy that process. Like, so I think it's about the communication with somebody always, but it's also about understanding like they're never they're never should sit on this pedestal of like you couldn't believe they did something or couldn't believe they acted some way, but then they should also never be underneath it where you're like I'm I'm here, therefore you must do this, this, and this, right? Like I think that's when you get into a very unhealthy situation.
Yeah, that
Well,
communication.
I think it's too where Joe came back to like saying keeping tabs on each other, and like expectation is the root of all disappointment. Like don't expect anything, but also don't take people's shit. Like if somebody's not pulling their weight in a
yeah,
relationship, you need to be able to have a discussion with somebody. And if you can't talk to your significant other, that's a good warning sign that you shouldn't be together.
yeah, that's literally what I was just about to say about being like how do you mediate, and that's definitely the communication. Like if you can't communicate, then you got to figure out, for one, perhaps maybe a way to communicate, but you also got to know when it's not working out and when it's probably best to move on.
Well, and some people like they'll say they can't communicate and they don't know how. But then if the relationship ends, they'll beg to have them back and say that they can work on it. Well, you could have worked on it while you were in the relationship. And everybody's got the ability to do it inside them. Maybe they just haven't historically done that in the past, or they're bad at it. Doesn't mean you can't do it. But that's when you lean into the other person and say, I know that we're struggling. I know that this has been a problem. I don't really know how to talk about it, but can you be patient with me while we try to learn how to get this to be a better situation? Like it
Mhm.
just takes honesty and like
Yeah.
be with yourself.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think like you said with honesty and expectations, I think that that's why communication is so important is because you need to know what the other person expects out of themselves, right? And that's when you can really, I think, come from a positive place of seeing behaviors or actions that you know the person's identified and been like, hey, I don't like this about myself. I want to change it. That doesn't mean throwing it in their face and being like, you're acting this way and now I need you to change, but more or less being like, hey, like I know that this isn't the type of behavior that you want to go down. It's not what you want of yourself. And the higher that you set the expectation bar for yourself, the more communication you open up for your partner to then hold you to that. like I know in my life I want to be successful, I want to pursue things I want to pursue. If I'm all of a sudden start waking up every day doing things that are going in the opposite direction, then I would like it if my partner was like, hey, this is something that you have voiced to me you want to do, and now I see your behavior not suiting that. Like that's where it comes again, like you guys said, a good friend will tell you the truth in the hardest time. Like a partner is just that amplified, but you
Yeah.
need to know what the person expects of themselves, because if you don't know that, then you can come from unrealistic standpoints.
I feel like there's a lot of people too that like they've become a master of words and like the talk is cheap role model. Like they'll say and promise the world, but like actions speak louder than words, and that's one of the biggest things in a relationship is you got to kind of take somebody at their word and give them a couple like passes to figure it out. Like don't expect perfection, but also don't like give in to the temptation just to constantly believe somebody when they're saying they'll do something and
yeah,
never
don't be a
actually.
doormat. Yeah, because you be a doormat, then all of a sudden you're not being able to, now you might even become afraid to voice your own opinion, and then there's just this bad feedback loop, and it gets messy and it gets nasty, and it's never fun. It gets
Well,
dramatic.
like the doormat thing definitely applies, and it's like if somebody's constantly putting you down or making you feel inferior, or the classic doormat syndrome. But there's also the, oh, I said I would clean up around the house more, or I said I would, like quitting smoking's a bad way of articulating it. But like, there's some things that go beyond like not letting somebody push you around and making you feel inferior. It's like things that we want in our lifetime and within our relationship and for the good of our family are going to take some effort and constant effort and a lot of work. And if you say you want these things and you just keep saying you want them, but you never do anything, then we're wasting time. And like you can't put up with somebody who's a like time stealer.
Love it.
Yeah, and like you said again, I think a good way to never let yourself feel like you're in a doormat situation or be able to identify it is again like it's not about confidence or being overconfident or arrogant, but it is, you know, understanding the expectation that you put on yourself is the highest expectation, and then therefore you want to meet that. You know, you feel confident in yourself because you understand that, like, you know, whatever I'm going after, whatever I'm pursuing, I'm putting the work in, or I'm focusing my efforts in that direction, whether that's a relationship or career or whatever. And ultimately, no one should feel like they're doormatted or they're walked over or they're whatever. But again, if you don't know what you stand for, then you can't stand for anything, right? And that's where it kind of comes down to that. Like, you got to know yourself in order to be a good partner.
Yeah.
At least to an extent. Like, I'm not saying you got to have yourself figured out. I sure as shit don't have myself figured out, working through it. But
You gotta have a good idea.
and at least try and understand where you like your morals to be, and where you believe, you know, you don't have to have a rock to die on, but know that, like, if there's certain issues and there's certain things that I think everyone deserves to be respected in, and those things are important to have expectations in.
People should have small goals and then like big goals. And I appreciate someone who has big goals that seem unattainable to others. But like I don't expect you to leap the Grand Canyon, so to speak, by tomorrow. Like as long as you're taking small steps towards the greater good, and I can see that, and it doesn't have to be every day because everybody has bad days, but like work towards something or
Yeah, aspiration's a big thing for me. And like, I mean, like I consider myself extremely aspirational, and you know, sometimes I might be shooting for the fence a little too often. And I feel like I'm biting off a little bit more than I can chew, but you know, that's just what I am. And like, you know, for me, like I haven't found love yet, but when I do, that's kind of what I'm looking for, is somebody that's going to continue to push me to keep going in that direction. Like one thing that's always scared me for, you know, and I've been single for years now, is that like being held back and being like, you know, I can see potential in myself, but I don't want to like, I don't want to like end up losing what, you know, I could be. For somebody that's pulling me back, that I might end up resenting, or you know, all these different fears. And I think that that's part of my problem. One of my problems is being like, just like opening up, you know, like, and being like, you know, like letting myself be vulnerable, because you know, I've been hurt a couple of times, like pretty bad times.
I had two up until my most recent one, and like there's a lot of people that find themselves at a fork in the road, and they toe the line between pushing the envelope too hard and seeming desperate, and you know not pushing it enough for fear of getting hurt. And I think the crazy thing is that people will always tell you, you know, you'll find love in the most unexpected places, and when you know it, you'll know it, or when you find it, you'll know it. And it's incredibly true. And you never really have to look for it. You just be yourself and constantly strive to be the best version of yourself, and that like gravitates people towards you because they see you doing well, and they want to do well in their own lives, so they figure this person can only help me be a better version of myself. And they're not focused on what they're not doing and what they don't have. They're focused on getting what they want. And I like that independence, and I like that, you
Yeah,
know,
me too.
strive for something behavior in another person.
Yeah, I think that ultimately that's all we really have, right? Whether you're like, all you really have is the view that you believe of yourself, and that's what you're going to put out to the public. And what you're going to get in return is that what you view of yourself, right? Like, and I know it's so much harder, like, to just say that than it is to do it, because everybody has tough thoughts. Everyone views themselves in different ways, but ultimately, like, the only person's mind you can convince about confidence or yourself or any situation like that is the individual of you. So it's like, if you know who you are and who you want to be, it's a lot easier for other people to be either involved in your life or attracted to your life, because you're going to find people who are interested in what you're interested in if you're wholly interested in it. You know, like, if you're doing something because you love it, you're going to find other people who love to do what you love to do. And then, like Jake said, like, I think a lot of times it's coined by, like, being like, oh, that guy's confident, or that guy has, you know, a lot of swagger, this or that, whatever it is. It's ultimately someone who, like, believes that no one's opinion other than their own matters, because ultimately it doesn't. Like, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks about you. It doesn't matter what anyone talks about you, says about you, whatever, other than yourself. Like, if you are saying good thoughts to yourself in your own head, then you're gonna have better days than worse days. And in your most vulnerable moment, people might say things about you, they might talk about you, they might whatever, but that really doesn't matter. That's not the thing that's going to be able to help you or change you. What's going to be able to help you or change you or help you find people who want to be involved in your life is that belief that, like, hey, I'm doing me, I like doing me, I'm enjoying doing me. And like Jake said, you can't look for those kind of things. They end up happening when they happen. And the more self work you do, the more you're able to realize, like, how much that can grow.
Yeah, and what a powerful insight that is, to be like, what's your relationship with yourself? Like, what do you tell yourself in your head, like when you're talking to yourself? And like, man, that's a big deal. That's a big deal for a lot of people. You know, there's a lot of people struggling. You know, myself included in the past, being, you know, going through depression or going through things that are like really tough, and it's so easy to just beat the crap out of yourself and your own thoughts. Like, it's so weird how you can just like simulate all these awful things, you know, even if none of them are even close to remotely being real. Like, you know, that's something that, like, I'm a little neurotic. That's just a thing about me. So like, I overthink a lot. But like, that's something that I've been dealing with, is that like how like the confidence thing. Like, for instance, like for me, like sometimes even with like sports or like playing video games or doing stuff, like either I'm awesome or I suck. Like, there's no in between for some reason. Like, there's no like stability. Either like I'm just on or I'm off, and that's a weird thing. Being like, how the hell do I mediate that? How the hell do I like stay centrally confident? And I think that's really what it is just that belief, like you're saying, Jackson, is that belief in yourself. And because like I'm feeling it now more than I have ever. Like, I've had moments of it in the past of being like really confident, and where I feel like my full self. And now it's, you know, and since moving out to Van, actually, that, you know, it's really starting to crystallize for me. And that whole concept for me is, and who I am has become stronger. And that's, I think, a good way to think of confidence is really just knowing yourself and like facing the stuff that upsets you and dealing with it. And, you know, for me, that was like thinking through it, but you know, that might be talking to somebody. If you need to talk to somebody, you go and see a psychologist or somebody, or like talk to your friends, or like, I think that's what's so important about relationships in general, is that it's a way to not, is it a way to share thoughts? Like, I think that's such a cool
That's
thing.
underrated. That's a very important thing to do in life, is to have somebody to bounce ideas off of, and the "am I crazy" effect, where they can tell you that, you know, some of what you're saying doesn't really make sense, but here's what does, and, you know, here's a different perspective you might want to chew on. And I think there's a lot of people that like struggle with what even makes me confident, and you kind of have to have that moment of realization and like self-reflection, and be honest with yourself about what am I good at and what am I not good at, and what's important for me in my own mind to be good at in order to portray confidence, because confidence is just being, you know, inflappable in the face of adversity, and knowing that whatever happens I can get through it because I'm a strong person. And the situations where I need to rise to the occasion, even if I don't, and it comes back to what we were saying on a previous podcast, is even if I fail, that does not make me a failure, because I will fail up until the point that I succeed. And it's in any endeavor in life that you really want to get something out of. You're not just going to be good at something because you have inherent talent. There's very few people that are just naturally exceptionally talented at any one thing that, you know, they deem important. You have to beat on your craft, you have to practice, and you have to get better and better each day.
Amen, man. Amen, brother.
Yeah, and
There's a lot of people that, you know, they see me doing better, and I've struggled with the same thing Joe's talking about. Like, I'm a very neurotic person. I overthink things constantly. I've dealt with depression, I have anxiety, but like outwardly I portray confidence because I know that I'm on the right path, and when I wasn't, I was a mess, but I had to reach out to get help and get better and back on the right track and refocus myself. And now that I kind of have, it's easier to navigate some of those difficult situations. And I really put a lot of stock into, you know, writing how you feel down and setting goals and making lists of like to do and objectives and goals. And there's people that I see, you know, like friends on Facebook that say like, you know, my life's a piece of shit. Like, where do I go from here? And they're like publicly begging for somebody to like give them the golden key to life, and it just doesn't exist. So the advice I give them behind the scenes, and I'm not a fucking like psychiatrist or a professional advice giver, but I know that like I can kind of guide some people towards just like a common sense outlook on how you should approach any given situation based on what you want out of it. And like some people are saying, how do I, you know, find out what I love to do? Well, you got to think back to when you were a kid about like what excited you, and you know, what could you do for the rest of your life without even getting paid, and enjoy it and like work towards getting paid for that. And if that doesn't exist, find the next best thing or the next best thing after that. And how do I become more desirable in a relationship? Well, you gotta work on yourself. And what are the attributes that most people look for? It's basic things like, you know, take care of your hygiene. Don't go 3 days without showering and then wonder why nobody wants to date you. You know,
don't go 1 day without showering and then question
like, how do I become more desirable? Have goals, have hobbies,
that.
get out there, be social, portray confidence even if you don't have it. Take pride in your appearance. You
Just
know, build a future for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And just to touch on like something that Jake said, and us three, you know, talking together, and you know, I think in a sense it's like it's very therapeutic that to have these conversations in certain ways and say things and talk, because I think we feel very similar. And you know, I've struggled with mental health and many different issues, and going through an image of myself that I've had and understanding and learning it. But honestly, like one of the biggest things that was like the one of the biggest like aha moments I had in my entire life is having a realization of like, hey man, like every single person feels the way that you feel, maybe different, maybe more, maybe less, maybe I went through a different experience and you don't understand, or you don't get this, or you don't get that. Hey, I'm not saying I understand it. I'm not saying I get your point of view and your perspective, or I don't understand your level of pain or hurt or whatever. But know that like every single person has that voice inside of their head to some degree. And like my brother came like he's always told me, he's like, if I ever write a book, it's the title's going to be My Inner Voice is an Asshole. And it's like it's the truest thing ever, man. Like your inner voice can be an asshole. It can be like you can look at yourself and point out everything that's wrong with it. You can look out in society and find everything wrong with it. But as soon as you understand that, like, no matter who you are, no matter what they're doing, no matter what they're pursuing, they have that inner voice that also judges them. Like no one in my mind really like shows pure confidence and pure um drive, or pure like I'm the best mentality. Everyone has that doubt, that inner voice. It's just how much are you going to listen to it, and how much are you going to allow it to control you, and then how much are you going to challenge it. Like that's what I'm really kind of going through now, is like challenging that inner voice, letting that inner voice be like, no, you can't do that because of this and this, and you're not ready, and people think you're stupid, and who are you? Like, who are you to say that? Who are you to do this? Like, people don't care. People don't want to hear your opinion. Okay, but what if? What if they do? What if I am good at that? What if I can do this? What if I try? What if I put effort to it? What if I write stuff down? What if I think about it a lot more? What if? Because every single person that you look up to, that you think has reached success or fame, whether it's in entertainment or sports or knowledge or university or whatever, all those people have that voice. They have that feeling, that thought, that inner animal
Critic.
Like they
critic.
didn't pull
Exactly.
success out of their ass; they worked for it.
Exactly. You prepare yourself to then, when that voice comes up, say, no, 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 I got this. Like, I
Yeah,
got this.
people see fear as like something to be afraid of. Like fear can be a powerful motivator, and it's probably like one of the most powerful ones. You need to like give into the fear and understand that you're afraid because of the unknown. Like either you're afraid to succeed and not be able to handle it, or you're afraid to fail. And you should never be afraid to fail because you'll learn the lessons that you need to succeed.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so true. And you know what? Even if you don't learn the lessons you need to succeed the first time, try it again. And then try it
Yeah.
again. And then try it again. And you
So there's
know
a lot of
what?
people like go ahead, sorry.
No, no, no. I was just gonna say that's ultimately it. Like, that's the whole point of there's never really a winning. Like, there's never life's a game, but you're never gonna win. You're always
Oh
gonna be in the
yeah,
pursuit of it.
if you rest on your laurels and you get complacent and like happy with where you are and you're comfortable, that'll be the death of your progress and progression. And like the most successful people never rest on their laurels. They're always looking at
It's,
the next thing.
it's so crazy. It's like you're surfing on fucking like being happy and not being happy, you know?
Be happy in retirement. Fucking
Or
work for what you want to get.
be like, I know it sounds so cliche because you see it everywhere now, but like, dude, be happy when you fail. And that's advice that I'm saying into this microphone to you guys that I need to take myself. Like, want the fail, pursue the fail. Like, know that when you fail, that's like being happy is the mindset that you then act in or act out of. But like, that mindset isn't it's not what you're going to get out of anything. Like, you're not going to get happy because you get the job you want. You're not going to get happy because you release the this or there you put yourself out there. You can be happy in all of those things, and it'll help you. And there's many ways to be happy in your everyday life, but like, you're not going to get happy. Like, happy to
One of
me,
the
yeah, it's not something that you obtain. It's something that you constantly can try and put yourself into to then better the whole pursuit.
Yeah, it's like a
one,
frame of mind. Yeah.
one of the most powerful quotes I ever heard was, "You're never happy with the achievements that you make. Happiness comes from the journey to achieve those things."
Yeah.
Exactly.
Be happy and not being happy with the things that you don't have yet.
Yeah, stop and smell the roses along the way and
Yeah.
like learn that you're making progress and you're going to achieve something and like enjoy it while it's going through. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people that might listen to this and think that we're robots and that we don't have emotions and that we have everything all figured out. We don't, guys. We we have the same issues as you guys. We're learning as we go too, and we might be a couple steps forward or a couple steps backwards than any given person. But the struggle is real for all of us. So these are kind of just
Yeah, and if you
you
got
know
any tips, let me know. Slide up in my DMs.
Yeah, straight up. I think it goes with the same for all of us.
Tell me how to do life better, because I haven't got a fucking clue.
there's a lot of people too that like they'll let a failed relationship kind of like ruin who they are and like their entire identity rests on like who they were in that relationship and they come to find after a failed relationship they don't know who they are or what they want or where they're going and they just feel like lifeless and like they have no purpose. So like one of the questions that I had and like I have my own philosophies on it, but like where do you go after a failed relationship? How do you better yourself and get back on track?
I think like it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, what I was talking about earlier, is kind of understanding the expectations that you have for yourself. Um, and then not putting that, like, don't, it's so easy to say because when you're with somebody and you view yourself as like that person's a part of your life and they're in your life and they help define you for who you are and all that stuff. But like ultimately that's kind of to me where relationships are built to fail, is when you start to believe that like when you lose that person, you lose a piece. Like, yeah, you lose a piece of yourself, but you also got to be sure of who you are in and out of that relationship, so that if that's the point that comes, you realize that the person you're with is a human and they're a person and they feel a way and they think ways and they have emotions just like you do. But you can't leech on either side of that. Like you can't expect more out of them and then that helps you better, and you can't expect less out of them to make you feel like they make you who you are.
Yeah, and there's like a lot of like crazy dependence going on to the point where like I could understand why one of the most valued and important things in a relationship is that the other person has either some sense or a strong sense of independence, where there's not this pressure on you to like dictate two people's lives. Like most people got their own struggles and their own shit going on. They don't need to have to hold somebody's hand through life. And that comes down to like, equally contributing to a relationship, because there's a lot of people that just kind of coast on the advice or the guidance of the other person in the relationship. And, if I was going to give advice on how to better someone after they go through a failed relationship, like you have to give yourself a break, understand that you did things to contribute to why that thing failed, and then understand what those things were to not make that mistake again when you have another opportunity, because it's not like those opportunities are given. And I think a lot of people, when they get out of a failed relationship or they've been single long enough where they're trying to decide like, how do I get back on the horse, the answer is you have to not be afraid to roll the dice. You're gonna meet people that won't like you, and there's this strange sense of, you know this feeling in society where we want to be liked by everybody. It's just not realistic. Like I have that problem a lot myself. I just generally want to be liked by everybody, but I have come to accept better that it's just not going to happen. And especially in the dating world, like you got in today's dating landscape where like Tinder and shit runs the show, like you're going to get people that don't even contribute equally to a conversation, where that's your cue to get the hell out of there. And you're going to have to go through 20, 30, 50 conversations and like dozens of dates before you find that one person that's just like equally contributing to a conversation or a situation, or the effort to put in to get to the next date, or are we going to be something, and oh god, we're something, what do we do now? Like it's an exciting time of like self development and like realization, and it's enjoy the journey and not be afraid to get knocked off the horse but get back on it.
Yeah, exactly. And don't, I mean, my thing with that is like, dude, if someone's interested in you, like, you're gonna know they're interested in you. Like you said, like if someone's not putting in the effort to have a conversation or go through with the conversation, like that's where you gotta value yourself. You gotta value your own time. You gotta value your own energy, and you can't ever look to another person to fulfill that for you, because it's like, I
Your
mean,
desperation stinks from miles away too.
yeah, I mean, it's not a good look. Like it's not good if you're out there. I mean, that's the thing. If you're out there and like, don't be afraid to just get out there and meet people. Have bad dinner dates, have bad bar dates, have bad experiences. Like, go through it. Like, meet people and understand that there's gonna be 100 people that you go out and meet and have little micro relationships with before you meet the one person that you can spend the rest of your life with. So it's like, be okay with failing, be okay with going into it with no expectations or less expectations. And yeah, we definitely are alive in a different time where you can literally see 1,500 faces on a dating app and pick which ones you like the best. It's a little different than when our grandparents went through it and you met someone when they were.
It becomes so superficial on the surface. Like people are choosing which people to go on a date with simply because they're attracted to them and not really even reading their profile. And there's a lot of dates that turn into the, I'm sticking by the point that me and Jackson made, that if they're wasting your time and you know that they're not contributing, get the hell out. I mean, be polite about it and just, enjoy it for what it is. But realize when you're wasting your time. But there's also these gray areas where they kind of fuck with you in the sense that they do contribute a little bit, but not enough, and you're wondering whether it's worth it to keep pursuing it when the answer is probably not. But it's really hard to tell sometimes, and like I can't blame people for being confused.
That's the game.
It is, and people play it.
I know people play it. Well, I think that like I like the idea of like gray areas is something that I think is a little important. I think one of my problems have been like I wanted to I want to find somebody I want to like be with for the rest of my life, right? Like I think that's a good foundation. But I think my issue has been my issue for quite some time is like going in that strong right off the bat, you know?
Not everybody. Yeah, you're expecting like the next date you go on will be that thing, when in reality, the next 15 won't be. But you still got to go on them, or else you'll never find the person that will be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't go into it. I mean, I shouldn't say you can't do whatever you want, but my my advice is like you can't go into it with the expectation of like I know what I want and I need someone to find. I need to find someone that matches what I want. It's because it's not going to be that. Like
Or
it,
you won't see it right away. Like some
it,
people could be that person you're looking for, but you push so hard at the start that they start to retreat in their shell, and you never get to find out who they are.
Yeah, it's heavy.
exactly. Or some people
Yeah.
don't know. Like some people don't know what they want, right? Like they don't know if that's what they're ready for, or what they want, or where they're going, or whatever. And I think that like understanding that like Jake said, man, you got to go on the 15 or 20 dates to realize that those 15 or 20 people aren't it. Like that ain't it. But that doesn't
The
mean
crushing. Go ahead, sorry.
no, I was just gonna say that doesn't mean that it's not worth it. Like it's still worth it. But go into it like if you go into it every single day being like this is the one, then you're gonna have your heart broken 15 times. But if you go into it being like dude, but then if you go into it being like, oh, dude, I love listening to music and drinking beer, and I'm gonna go listen to music and drink beer, and this girl just happens to be there with me, then
Yeah.
it's gonna be a good experience because you're doing some things you like, and then if she ends up being a total bitch, then guess what? Move on. You got 14, 15, 16, 30 more to
Bitches.
go. I'm
Sorry.
not saying every girl is. I'm just saying, hey, there's a lot more jackass guys than there are B-word girls. But
Yeah.
my point being is like, figure out that like the relationship of just meeting people and talking to people, like that's a trip in itself. Like going and meeting someone you've never met in your whole life for a drink and just being like, "What's up?
Yeah.
What have you been doing for the past 30 years?" Like, I don't know. I think
I
that you take positives out of all of it.
I had a really rough breakup at one point, and I didn't even know where to go with myself. And like I knew that when I wanted to start dating again, that I wanted more than even what me and her had, but I would have been happy just to get even close to the same level again and work from there. But then you become so like hell bent on finding that, and like the older you get, especially at the age I was starting to get towards with not being in a serious relationship for like 4 or 5 years after that, I was like, is there something wrong with me, or am I expecting too much? Or the pressure on you becomes, and it comes from yourself, like it just becomes soul crushing to the point where you start to really question your approach. And it comes down to like you got to give yourself a break, you got to be yourself, but also like dial it down and just be a cool person that you would want to hang out with type person to start, and go from there.
Yeah, like be your friends for sure, man. Like, and it's been years for me, but do you believe in magic? Like I believe. Do you
You're a
believe?
cool person. You got a lot to offer. So I mean, it's not for lack of what you have to give on your end. It's like a combination of there's probably a lot going on in your life that's taken focus away from like trying to meet somebody, to the point where you were talking about before, where you want what you want, but it also comes down to like you do have what it takes to be like a contributing member of a functioning, healthy relationship.
Yeah,
You just gotta go through the steps of meeting that person, and it's not easy.
yeah, that's the thing, and then and like, I mean, for me, it was career. Like, I don't know. For me, like, for so many years, I was like, I needed to be where I wanted to be career wise, like with my job before. And that could be a mistake on my part. You know, there could have been a lot of potential women that I could have spent the rest of my life with. But for
But
some reason,
are they holding you back from your goal? Because if they are, then you have a pretty good point to why you didn't end up with them, and I would say you made the right choice. But if you're like pretty convinced that your landing spot, say Vancouver, is where you want to be, and the career is going good, or it's on the right path, the it goes back to what Jackson and I were saying before. If you just meet a girl and you keep it casual, and then eventually it starts to get serious, and you realize that she supports your goal of your career, and she'll like be that person to like bounce those ideas off of at the end of the night, whether it's career or anything else, and she'll make you feel like conviction and like
yeah,
motivation.
that's what I want. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, and
Man, dude, like I
you'll
need
get
it.
it.
I need it because like the thing about it too is that like I understand that when I find her, when I find that woman that does that for me, and I don't want to get too generalized, but I know that that's gonna help. Like, because what I'm looking for is something that's gonna like. There's only so far that I can go on my own. Like, if I had a good partner beside me, that would help me. It would help me get farther, right? Because it wouldn't be just me talking with me. It would be I'd have a different perspective, and those
Which
things
is
are important. I think.
Which is
the
totally
right girl for you would be the one that you could talk about that stuff with.
which is totally valid. I just think in kind of what I've been saying earlier, like if all we can control is the mindset behind life in general, right? Like you can't control necessarily what's going to happen. You can put in hard work and you can set your wishes and chase those goals, but like if all you can really control is the mindset that you wake up with every day, don't like try. I'm not telling you what to do or not to do, but try to not put the pressure behind it of like that will make you better, and just know the confidence behind like I'm going somewhere, and if that happens, then I'm gonna roll with it. But there's never gonna be a relationship that like gives you exactly what you want or is exactly what you want it to be. But in the same time, knowing that like that's an aspect of what you want is important, and you'll find it. But I think the idea is that like you gotta like rest that responsibility and that burden on your own shoulders, and someone else will see that and take it off your shoulders. Like put the responsibility of like I want to be this, I want to be in this position, I want to be doing this in my wherever, and then continue to do what you're doing and chase it and go after it and pursue it, and eventually someone's going to show up and go, oh, I see what you're doing, I too want to do something like that, or I too want to help you, let me take some of that, let me take some of your burden and realize like, hey, you got it. Keep going after it. And I'm just going to help you. But I don't think you
Yeah.
can look for anybody to come in and make it better. Like, I think that the people naturally make it better, but there's never going
Yeah.
to be.
Well, I think you phrased it in a way that's basically what I meant. Like you nailed it,
Yeah.
dude. Like I love the way you phrased it there. That's it.
I think communicating what he wants or what anyone in his situation wants is a very important factor that Jackson mentioned. And it's like communicating it in digestible doses over a reasonable amount of time, not just a 3-hour conversation the night you meet.
First
This
date.
is what I want to do. Are you the one?
That's
Yeah.
important.
I want to be the prime minister, and I want to fuck up the world. Okay, so
Yeah. Don't break out the paperback novel on the first date. That's
But I like that we're not all in the same situation. Like I like that there's one of us that's not in a committed long-term relationship because it gives a different perspective, and it's not to say that being single is a bad thing. Like you could,
I love it. But I mean,
yeah.
bouncing ideas off you guys, it really creates a nice dialogue, and it almost parallels the like right wing, left wing, dialogue that we were touching upon at the beginning of this podcast. Is like that. I think that's important. That's cool. I like it.
So on that note, we're about an hour and 30 minutes into this thing. Do we want to do some lightning round here?
let's do it. Let's bang on some lightning round.
Do some lightning round, baby.
It's time for lightning round. It's time for lightning round.
Woo, Joe, you're on the spot, buddy. What you got for us?
All right, we got some fascinating trivia questions and answers in the realm of science, but not too sciencey, like, digestible stuff.
God damn it.
This will be the first lightning round that isn't really themed to the episode, but how can you have relationship themed trivia? It doesn't exist.
Well, I was searching for that for a long time, and I think that, like, okay, so here's what I'm thinking.
Opinion based.
I'm thinking a lot of the world is like, if you think about it, relationships can be really applied to everything. So I thought that, well, science is like basically everything, so there's got to be some relationship-esque stuff in here, and there's a little bit of it.
All right, I got you.
Okay.
I like what you put down.
So, okay, question 1. What is the hottest planet in the solar system?
Mercury.
Ooh. Jupiter.
Nope. Double guess.
Venus.
Venus is correct. That's one for Jake.
That was going to be my next guess.
Okay, so what is the largest known land animal?
A hippo?
Rat.
Nope.
Elephant.
An elephant is right. Jake with 2. 2-0. Okay. What tissues connect the muscles to the bones?
Tendons.
Damn, Jake for 3. Okay, we're gonna give Jackson the opportunity to answer this next one. Question 4. True or false? Sound travels faster in air than in water.
False.
That is correct.
Yes, I'm
One
so
point for Jackson.
Yes.
All right, that's 3 points for Jake, 1 point for Jackson. Next up question. How many elements are in the periodic table?
52.
Negative.
100 and...
Ooh.
No. Back that up. Not 100 and something.
Well,
close?
yeah.
Damn. Okay. 120.
When are you legal?
Yeah, 121.
118.
It is 118. It is 118.
Legal in what sense? You didn't specify. My epic rants can be these trash trivia questions that keep coming up every episode.
Okay. What type of animal was Laika?
Anacle.
What the hell is a Laika?
A cat.
Oh.
A feline.
Well.
A tiger. A lion.
Okay, closer to a cat.
Dude, what's a Laika?
It's the name of an animal. You were so close with cat, but not a cat.
Yeah, feline.
Like the opposite of a cat.
A dog.
Nailed it.
I'll give it to Jackson.
4-2. Okay. What is considered the highest mountain in Africa?
Kilimanjaro.
Nailed it. 5 out of 2.
Way to
5 out of 2.
You gotta be quick.
Yeah, kids on fire. No wonder they call it lightning round.
True or false? Your hair and your nails are made from the same material.
True.
Nailed it. 5-3. That's 8 questions in.
I said true before he did, but that's okay. He did.
I don't know about that.
I started it before he did, but Joe doesn't even hear me registering. So
Animals that eat both plants and meat are called what?
Omnivores.
That's a 9.
Yeah.
Okay. This is one for Jake. 6-3 is the current tally.
I can't lose, so I'm just going to shut up now.
What do bees collect and use to create honey?
Pollen.
Close. Think juicier.
Nectar.
Nectar.
I'm going to give that to Jackson because, yes.
Dude, Dude, I'm putting it out there for the sake of our listeners. Our trivia questions, there has to be more effort put into them.
That's fair.
What
That's
the
fair.
hell am I supposed? How? Like, anyways, yeah, it's all right. Next question.
I tried, man, finding like a relationship, social study, trivia questions.
Googling trivia questions 5 minutes before the podcast starts is not trying.
I had this prepared like 20 minutes after we began. Like it was ready for it.
Yes.
Okay, so this essential gas is important so that we can breathe.
Oxygen.
Yes.
Like, come on.
Thought it was helium.
That was the first question on this list.
Oh, so you skipped that one before going back to it.
We're gonna have a domestic.
So it actually does kind of work into this like relationship theme. I kind of like it. On what part of your body would you find the pina?
I'm not even answering that. The peanut.
If you listen, you'll figure it out.
The ear.
Ah, that's it. That's Jake for the win.
That's actually a cheeky hint.
Jake for the win. Okay. So I guess our next Jake's got the rant for tonight.
All right. Well, on that note,
what's weird in the world today? What's weird in the world today?
we're gonna toss this one to Jackson because he needs to do something.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm okay. I'm fine. Actually, pretty cool. What's weird in the world today, which is actually, I support this heavily. The Ontario government unveils a new elementary math curriculum with coding and budgeting. So this is an article from the City News, Toronto City News, which is, I'll just read the first little bit. But Toronto unveiled a new elementary math curriculum Tuesday, including learning to code and expanded learning on financial literacy. Education Minister Stephen Lease had previously announced a $200 million math strategy focusing on back-to-basics approach. And then it goes on to just talk about stuff and things. But ultimately, I think that's cool as shit. I think that it's about time. It's kind of that like age-old joke that's been going on that I think everyone's kind of sick of is like school. When the hell am I ever going to use this? Like, why are we learning this? When am I going to use it? Well, you don't really use a lot of it. A lot of it is very specific. And I think that like if that's what you're into and that's what you want to study and go after, then that should be an option. But ultimately, introducing coding and budgeting at a young age, it definitely allows kids to hear, even just like hearing those terms and concepts and thinking of those ideas at a young age, it'll definitely impress and like make a lot of kids think about different options of what their future could look like moving forward. And I think it really sets a lot of kids up for a better potential future in different areas of emerging fields and just life in general, knowing what a credit card does, what taxes are, how to budget different things, how to spend money. All that stuff is definitely important. And it's about time that we started learning it at a young age. That's it.
I think that's what's cool in the world today. That's not weird. That's
like
not
weird.
That should be common sense.
What's cool in the world? Ooh, I like that. I like that too. Okay, I think Jake, you should go for your what's weird, and then I'll do mine, and then you can do your rant.
I got so I'm gonna buck the trend here and kind of cheat a little bit, but both of mine are quick. So I'm gonna do two of them because there's not much substance to them. I just think they're hilarious. So apparently in the United Kingdom, there was a demonstration with a bunch of protesters, and there was a bizarre clip where a fight appears to have broken out between supporters of the All Lives Matter movement and the White Lives Matter movement about like who was more racist. And ironically, it was on a day where the Black Lives Matter protest was actually canceled in the city. So these idiots show up instead and start arguing with each other about who is racist when the answer is you're probably both. And then the other one is apparently you guys have seen the Netflix show Space Force or like heard of it?
Yeah, I've watched bits of it. It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I just finished it. It's good.
So apparently, the U.S. military could lose the Space Force trademark to the Netflix series because they haven't acted quick enough on trademarking it. So apparently, they say it won't cause as much friction because like people won't obviously confuse a Netflix series with like something about an actual branch of the U.S. military. But apparently, they might have to fight over the trademark in court. And Netflix has been far more aggressive already and has already locked down the rights to the name in several countries.
Wow.
So,
Dude, if
that's kinda
Netflix doesn't send Steve Carell into the courtroom to negotiate for that, they're missing the boat.
So yeah, that's what I thought was weird. Joe, what you got?
I got a quick little digestible couple ones too. So this thing is called the Voynich manuscript. It's a mysterious book written in an untranslatable language. And so it's a 204. The Voynich manuscript is a 240-page medieval tome written in an unknown language that has baffled scholars and codebreakers for years. I'm reading this off ScienceAlert.com. The manuscript is believed to have originated sometime between 1404 and 1438. So that's like just before the Renaissance, right? That's like just before Italy was like art and Picasso and all this crazy shit. It's filled with enigmatic illustrations and diagrams that seem to depict everything from unusual plants to women with swollen bellies bathing in green pools. In 2018 January, a group of Canadian computer scientists announced that they may have had some limited success decoding parts of the manuscript using AI. I think that's really fascinating that there's just like this entire tome of something's being written and they're saying something and no one can figure out what it is in medieval times. So that's like what, anywhere from like 500 to 1,000, 1,500 or so. That's pretty wild. And then the next one that I had was a little tiny one, but it has to do with, there's an entire cave that is filled and created of salt, which I think is absolutely fascinating.
Are there penis fish in the salt?
No, there's no penis fish, but the Salt Cathedral of Zipaquira is an underground Roman Catholic church in Cundinamarca, Colombia, that was excavated from a salt mine.
There's some sketchy shit going on in that salt mine.
In Colombia? Are you sure that's salt?
Yeah, Zipaquira. I don't know if I'm saying that right.
And it just happens to be owned by the Catholic government. Don't like that. Don't
bring pepper.
Yeah. The cathedral includes a giant salt cross and can accommodate up to 10,000 people, though it has never been filled to capacity. They're probably pretty salty about that. Anyway, Jake for his rant.
Time for your favorite segment, Epic Rants.
All right, so we were talking a lot about it before, and it got me pretty fired up. So I'm gonna like use that as a springboard. And we talked about that slimy eel, Mitch McConnell. Everyone knows what a flamboyant moron Donald Trump is, and I could go through the Supreme Court, many members of the Senate, all the way to the House about all these old, decrepit white guys that are ruining politics. And, you know, politicians have been corrupt for so long, we've kind of forgotten what it's like to have ones with morals. But there is hope for the future. So I'm a big fan of Bernie Sanders, and people can say what they want about his policies and whether they're realistic or whether they're achievable. But the man has fought for the common man for the better part of like 30 years, and there's documentation and videos to support that. And I think that this whole progressive movement that he's inspired, I don't think he's going to run again. I think he's done, but I think his impact on American politics will transcend him, and it'll echo out into the annals of the country through these young progressive candidates that are all starting to get elective in like mayoral candidacies and different ridings and in the House of Commons and in the Senate. And I think, give it like 15, 20 years, the political landscape will probably be a lot different with a lot of these old boys, so to speak, retiring and giving way to people with new ideas and expanded ways of looking at difficult situations, whether it's the environment or the economy or social situations. I'm a little scared for how much it might change, but at the same time, change is good. And, I'm willing to embrace it. And I think there is hope for American politics when right now it seems like there is none. So that is my epic rant for the day.
That's fair. I like it.
There it is.
Well, it's been another fantastic episode of the See What Sticks podcast. I can't wait till the next one. If you guys want to check us out on any of our social media, I'm not going to rattle through them again. We can post links up on our website. You can hit any of the buttons on there. Go to seewhatsticks.net. You can check out our blogs and all the archive podcasts as we put them up, and you should see content very soon. Any parting words, boys?
Nope. Have a good day, guys. Enjoy life. Smile. Be happy. Be a good person. Don't be shitty. And don't do stupid things. Well, if you do stupid things, just learn from them and don't do them twice. But that's it.
Amen.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know. God be with you. I don't know.
And also unto you. All right, boys. Catch you later.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.